From Pacifica Radio in San Francisco, this is Flashpoints, also a rebellion from the roots by a Bay Area artist and grassroots activist who is calling for a citizen uprising in support of a nationally coordinated effort for systemized testing and tracking of the virus. Whew. All that coming up straight ahead on Flashpoints. Stay tuned. And I'm happy to welcome back to these airwaves, to this show, an old friend of the Pacifica community, the KPFA community. His name is John Sheridan. He was part of the group of rebels who made sure that we didn't lose this radio station called KPFA when there was sort of a corporate board, half raid, half steal. And we all had to sort of get arrested to stand up for free speech radio. And John, an artist, was part of, there were amazing signs that were being made and posters and all kinds of incredible people. And John was one of them who had stood up as a part of a community that wanted to save this network. And John is standing up again. And he's, he's on the fourth day of hunger strike. John Sheridan, welcome to Flashpoints.
Thank you, Dennis.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I was born in Detroit. I'm of, Irish, French, German ancestry, and I initially was going to go to medical school. I decided abruptly to switch to the College of Art, and I've been an artist ever since then. I was 19, I'm now 66, and I moved out to California to go to graduate school in the arts, and I really like the weather out here, so I've stayed.
So you stayed. Well, we're glad you did, and we've always loved the art. We should go back and do a retrospective on the KPFA art. There was at least one showing somewhere around. But I want to talk to you about, you're in your fourth day of a hunger strike. Tell us why you are on a hunger strike, John.
A hunger strike occurred to me, came out of great frustration from the national lack of response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I had two friends who had the virus in March. They both recovered, fortunately, but neither one of them ever could get a test at any time. And this just shocked me. It outraged me. And ever since then, I've been following the path of the contagion in America and elsewhere very, very, very closely. And I realized that one of the biggest shortfalls of our entire response, and this is something that as a knock-on effect and makes everything else that's happening, all the deaths, the illnesses, the dislocations worse, is that we don't have enough tests for people who may be testing positive, to find those people and then to isolate them for just 14 days until the virus burns itself out, which it will, and then they're free to go. A second component to that is social tracing, which is a little more controversial because people are worried about government intrusion into their lives, who their contacts are. But if you test positive, it only makes sense that the people around you should also be tested. And if they test positive, they need to be isolated as well for just 14 days. And in a few layers of doing that, you can extinguish the virus, not merely delay it. It was this realization over time in my studies that caused me to look around and trying to see if anybody was offering a solution. And that is, as far as I can see, at this point, without a vaccine and without any treatment, I think universal testing and tracing is the solution that we need. But the rollout is going to have to be at a federal level, and that's our big problem, because as we know, the federal government is not supportive of massive testing. The guy in the White House thinks it makes him look bad, and the people in the Senate particularly are standing in the way of any type of a national rollout. But a national program of universal testing and tracing is what we absolutely have to have. This led me to try to figure out how I could, as just an artist, just as an individual, start something to create a wider consciousness of the need for universal testing and tracing, because talked to hundreds and hundreds of people. People are so confused as to what we should do and not do. The confusion is all over the place. So it occurred to me, since I was locked down and my business was badly affected by this, and I had a lot of free time. I had a lot of time to research and think about it. So it occurred to me that a hunger strike might actually help focus people's attention on this issue. And that's really the nuts and bolts of it. I'm just hoping to try to get people's attention long enough to focus on universal testing and tracing as a potential solution to the virus, not merely flattening the curve, not merely delaying it, but actually extinguishing the virus in a matter of months.
Well, I should tell people you're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio, by the way. We're speaking with John Sheridan. He's in the fourth day of a hunger strike. He is trying to create a movement to demand universal COVID-19 testing and tracing in the United States. Everybody knows that is a crucial part of what needs to happen now. People, they're talking gaga goo-goo about a vaccine, but that's, no matter what anybody says, if you listen, if you read between the lines there, it's 2 years. So
easily.
This is not about, if anything ever happens, but it's not about that. It's about taking control. And I think you would agree with me that the shocking part of this is if you look at, say, South Korea, they found their first case on the same day of the United States, and they have no cases, or a couple of cases. China had no cases. Wherever, I could name 10, 15 countries. Italy, everybody was horrified. They're open.
Vietnam has had no confirmed cases, no confirmed deaths. No confirmed deaths in Vietnam, a country of 96 million people, almost a third of the United States, and they had zero. But they had a robust and thorough federal response, and because they got to the problem earlier, they didn't need an ongoing massive testing project. They had a combination of testing, social tracing, isolation, and basically wearing masks. The other very crucial thing about Vietnam and Taiwan and South Korea is that they didn't have to shut their economy down like we have. And that is another thing that's causing huge suffering in our society. We're looking at 75 million evictions coming up very soon because people can't pay their rent because the economy's in the tank.
Wow. All right. Again, we're speaking with John Sheridan. Message to the mothership. If it's okay with you, John, I'm going to just, for a few minutes, open up the phones.
Sure.
And the phone number is, please forgive me, Mike. I hope we can do this. Write me some hate mail on the screen if I can't. But the number is 510-848-4425. 510-848-4425. And you can just send me a note if we actually can get somebody on. Because I'd like to, you're asking the community in the Bay Area, around the country, because we're a national show, if this is an idea they're interested in. Are you asking people what are you asking people to do? You're hunger striking. Are you asking people to join you in a hunger strike? Are you, what are you looking for?
No, I'm not asking anybody. I think that'd be pretty irresponsible if I expected people to follow me down this path. It's not something I've ever done before, so I can't speak from any experience. It is the fourth day, and I haven't had any food in 4 days for the first time.
So you never did this before? You never hunger strike before? Well, what about this situation has led you?
Well, the great examples of the past, particularly people who did it, who are not incarcerated, people like Cesar Chavez and Dick Gregory in the United States, and in England, the suffragists, the women who were fighting for the vote in Britain, they were force-fed. Some of them died. This tremendously inspired Gandhi when he went back to fight the British occupiers. He went on hunger strikes as well, inspired by the the women in Britain who were fighting for the vote. And so I was looking at examples of this, as well as in 2013, 30,000 American prisoners in our prisons, hunger-struck for better conditions, immigrants who are afraid of getting sick in our detention camps. Some of them are hunger striking. So there's a long history of very, very brave people, a lot braver than me, who have really undertaken this with no expectation that they were going to gain anything out of it. But it's sometimes, I like to say, sometimes you just have to do the right thing. You have to do the right thing, and that's just the way I'm looking at it. And I'm hoping that people will hear this message, will concentrate, and imagine that there is a solution to this, that other people, Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Romer, Harvard's epidemiologist Ashish Jha, and others are strongly advocating for universal testing and tracing as an actual solution, because it would actually allow the virus to burn itself out until it became virtually extinguished from the society, and then we could just hit hot spots as they came up. But the path that we are on now, Dennis, is what we're heading for is actually, even with all the mask wearing, all the social distancing, all the social dislocation, all the suffering, we're still headed toward herd immunity, which means 65% of the population is going to be infected. That's 200 million people. That's 15% of them are going to be hospitalized. That's 25 million people, and a percentage of them will die. And at that rate, it'll be 800,000 to 1.5 million people in the United States are going to eventually die from this. And it's all unnecessary.
It's so true, and it's a tragic moment in history. We have Julian join us from San Francisco. You're on with our good friend John Sheridan.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. Yeah, I wanted to comment about your crusade and, I guess, have compulsory testing of all the citizenry. Is that what you're pushing for?
Yes, it would have to be. You would have the only reason for that. It's not, because it's a fun thing to do, but the number of people who are actually infected is a very small number, a growing number, but it's very small, and consequently, you have to test everybody in order to find those people who are tested positive but are asymptomatic, because the infection time, the time that you can be infectious, is up to 2 weeks with COVID, as opposed to 2 days for the flu. So if we don't test everybody, it's like leaving the barn door wide open and wondering why your horses are running down the road. It's a temporary program. It's something that could be done in a matter of months, and then it could be sunsetted or scaled dramatically back. The other benefit to having it is that if you have a pandemic in the future, you have a blueprint of how to tackle it, and we won't do what we're doing now, which is merely allowing the virus to spread through the entire society.
All right, let me jump in here. I'm sorry to interrupt. We have Marie join us from Palo Alto, California. You're with us on Flashpoints, and say hello to John.
Well, thank you. Thank you. This is Marie Louise, and yes, I am in Palo Alto. And when you were speaking of Gandhi, I thought of the fact that Gandhi, whenever he did any kind of action, he always managed to spread the message out that it was happening. He didn't just do it. And I'm not saying you're not spreading it out, but today...
Yeah, we're on the radio now. Yeah, go on.
What? Oh, okay.
I'm saying we're on the radio. It's sort of spreading out now, but go on.
You're right. And beyond that, just that, when you go into not eating for some length of time, in whatever ways that message can be spread, which could be ever so much more than what Gandhi could do back in time. So I'm wishing you very well with this, and fasting is not easy, but I wish you well, and I hope it gets heard and known of. So that's all I've called about.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your call. Just have a minute left, John. Again, remind us what you're hoping for. What's your best wish out of this hunger strike that you're having and this organizational work that you're doing?
Thanks. What I hope to do, I think the most realistic thing is to try and develop a grassroots pressure from below, because that's another thing that prompted me to do this. I've asked all my progressive activist friends, and nobody knows of any progressive movement or any activist movement that's trying to demand universal testing and tracing. So I figured that this is something that has to start somewhere. In this case, it's starting with one person. But sometimes an idea has a life of its own, and I'm hoping that as people hear this, as the clarity of the import of it, the fact that it is a solution and not merely a palliative, it's not merely a delay like we're doing now, gets through to people, that they will talk to other people, that they will call their Congress people, that they will write letters to the editor, to the media, and that we will begin to grow a consensus from below that will put pressure above. Right now, it's mostly academics. As I say, Harvard came out with a roadmap for universal testing and tracing. It's a great document, and that's at Harvard. But the average person is just not focusing on this as a solution. And I don't think it's so complicated that we can't communicate it.
It's a lack of leadership and understanding. We're out of time. I'm sorry, John. Please keep us posted. I really respect your courage and your decision in this context, really, to stand up for the people. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dennis.
All right, and that's it for us. This is Flashpoints. What a privilege to broadcast to you over these free speech, no holes barred, truth to power, fight back radio. The show is Flashpoints. It's Pacifica Radio, KPFA in the Bay Area. We're gone.
That wraps it up for another edition of Flashpoints. Our executive producer is Dennis Bernstein. Our roving producer and producer of Flashpoints in Espanol is Miguel Gavilan Molina. Our technical director is Mike Biggs. For more information about the show, to listen to or download archived episodes, log on to flashpoints.net or visit our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/flashpoints. For questions or comments about Flashpoints, you can contact Dennis at dennisjbernstein@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm CS, co-host of Against the Grain. After months of precautions, lockdowns, and social distancing, coronavirus cases and hospitalizations are spiking in the Bay Area. In times like these, it's KPFA's duty, our community-minded duty, to remind listeners to stay vigilant about wearing masks, washing hands, and doing social distancing. We all want to return to normal, but first, we need to stay alive. Be safe, be smart, and thanks for listening to KPFA.
You're listening to 94.1 KPFA, 89.3 KPFB in Berkeley, 88.1 KFCF in Fresno, 97.5 K248BR in Santa Cruz, and online worldwide at kpfa.org.